you're going to be hearing back from someone. Don't ignore this saying, ladies and gentlemen. There comes a moment in life when you begin to feel something shifting in the unseen, a soft tug on your heart, a sudden reminder of a person you thought you'd forgotten, or an unexpected dream that feels too real to ignore. You wake up and their name lingers in your spirit. You go about your day and somehow a memory, a song, or even a random message seems to echo their presence. You might call it coincidence, but deep within, you know it isn't. It's a sign, a divine whisper that someone is about to reach out to you again. And I'm here to tell you, don't ignore this sign. Every connection that ever mattered to your heart carried a purpose. Whether it was a friend, a family member, or someone you once loved deeply, no bond rooted in truth ever truly dies. Sometimes God allows separation not as an ending, but as a sacred pause, a moment of silence where both souls can grow, heal, and align with the greater story He is writing. When that process is complete, something begins to stir. The Spirit starts to move, aligning circumstances, softening hearts, and preparing a divine moment of reconnection. That's why lately you've been feeling something unusual. That's why their name keeps resurfacing. Heaven is signaling that the season of silence is shifting. Many people miss these divine hints because they dismiss them as nostalgia or emotion. But spiritual signs are never ordinary. When God wants to bring restoration, He begins with awareness. He awakens your heart first, then aligns the timing. You may have prayed for this person long ago, and while you moved on with your life, those prayers continue to echo in eternity. Now, as divine timing unfolds, the same energy that once connected you is stirring again, not for drama or confusion, but for completion, healing, or divine purpose. So, when you sense this stirring, do not panic, do not rush to reach out, and above all, do not ignore it. Sit with it. Listen, pray, ask for clarity, because this is not just about hearing back from someone. It's about hearing from God through the message they carry. Sometimes the message is, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's, I understand now. And sometimes it's simply, thank you. But in every case, it's meant to reveal something about who you were, who you've become, and what God wants to complete within you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about returning to the past. It's about understanding the purpose of the past. That call, that message, that moment of reconnection that's coming your way, it isn't random. It's divine. It's a sign that God's timing is perfect, and when something is meant for you, no silence, no distance, and no delay can stop it. Prepare your heart, because you're going to hear back from someone soon. And this time, it will make sense. When the Spirit begins to stir someone's heart, it is never random. There is no such thing as coincidence in the divine order of life. Every thought, every name that rises in your spirit, every sudden remembrance of someone from your past, it all carries meaning. You may think it's just your mind wandering, but in truth, it's the whisper of divine intelligence moving through you. God works in ways that are quiet yet powerful. He orchestrates reconnections, realignments, and awakenings long before they appear in the natural realm. When you feel someone's energy pull at your soul out of nowhere, it is a sign that heaven is arranging something in the unseen. You must understand that when God wants to reconnect two souls, He doesn't do it through chaos or confusion. He does it through peace and purpose. That gentle stirring in your heart is not an emotional weakness. It's spiritual awareness. Something is being awakened in you and in them. Perhaps it's forgiveness, perhaps it's unfinished purpose, or perhaps it's divine timing finally aligning after a season of growth. Whatever it is, the moment you begin to sense it, you must not dismiss it. God never wastes a stirring. For many, this experience feels strange. You could be living your life, healing, moving forward, when suddenly a name you haven't thought of in months or years surfaces in your heart. You might see a sign, something simple, like their favorite song playing unexpectedly or a memory replaying in your dreams. It's as though the universe, or rather the Spirit of God, is trying to get your attention. And it is. The Spirit moves subtly, drawing your awareness to what He is about to bring forth. These are not mere coincidences. They are spiritual signals that preparation is happening on both ends. At times, one person awakens before the other. You may be the one who feels it first, who senses the shift before anything physically changes. That is because spiritual sensitivity is not equal in all people. God may have chosen you to perceive it first so you can prepare your heart. When the other person finally hears that same inner call, they will respond in ways that might surprise you. It could come as a message, a phone call, or even an unexpected encounter. But by the time it happens, your spirit will already know, because it felt the signal long before your eyes saw it. It's important to remember that God never reconnects two people prematurely. He waits until the lesson has been learned, the ego has been humbled, and both hearts are ready to listen. You may have once tried to force that connection, and it failed. It failed because it wasn't time yet. The Spirit had not yet stirred them. But when God decides the moment has come, He can reach places you cannot. He can touch their mind in the stillness of the night, bring your name into their thoughts, and awaken their conscience to what they once overlooked. Suddenly, they begin to feel what you once felt. They begin to understand what you were trying to express all along. This is the mystery of divine timing. When the Spirit stirs a heart, pride begins to melt, confusion clears, and truth rises to the surface. Someone who once ignored you may suddenly see your worth. Someone who once left may suddenly feel a deep conviction to make things right. The same Spirit that comforted you during your season of pain is now working on them quietly, patiently, perfectly. And while you may not see it yet, heaven is orchestrating a meeting point that will happen not by chance, but by divine appointment. That's why it's so important not to chase or force what God is still preparing. When you feel the stirring, your role is not to reach out in desperation. It is to stand still in faith. The Spirit that stirred you is capable of stirring them. Let God move freely without your interference. If you try to make it happen in your own timing, you may interrupt the process. But if you trust the timing, the connection will unfold naturally, beautifully, and purposefully. You won't have to manipulate anything. Grace will do the work. Many people misinterpret this stirring as a sign to act immediately. But divine stirring is not a command to move. It is an invitation to discern. The Spirit is showing you what is forming behind the veil. It's a moment to prepare your heart, not to rush your hand. When God is ready to bring the message, it will find you. You won't have to look for it. What is meant for you will recognize you. The same Spirit that guided you into healing will guide them into revelation. When the stirring begins, you'll notice other things shift as well. Old emotions may resurface, not to hurt you, but to show you how much you've grown. Memories might come back, not to trap you in the past, but to remind you that nothing is wasted. God allows these emotional echoes to surface so you can see them through new eyes. Where there was once pain, you now feel peace. Where there was once longing, you now feel understanding. This is the sign that you are ready. You've evolved. You no longer see that connection as a source of lack, but as a chapter of divine purpose. And just as you reach this point of inner peace, the Spirit begins to stir them. The same transformation you experienced silently begins to happen within them. They start questioning old decisions, reflecting on moments they ignored, sensing that something unresolved remains. That's when the Spirit begins to whisper your name to their heart. They might not understand it at first, but it grows stronger with time until they cannot ignore it. Then, when God says the word, communication will open, a message will come, a door will appear, and you will recognize that this was not coincidence, this was God. When the Spirit stirs, it always leads to revelation. Sometimes it restores relationships, other times it brings closure. Either way, it fulfills divine order. Your job is to stay sensitive, stay faithful, stay in peace. The Spirit never has you without purpose. Every nudge has meaning, every reminder has timing, and every reconnection carries destiny. So when you feel someone pulling at your spirit out of nowhere, don't rush to explain it away. Sit with it. Pray about it. Let God reveal what He's doing. The stirring may not always lead to reunion, but it will always lead to revelation. And when it's truly from God, the peace that follows will be unmistakable. Because when the Spirit moves, confusion cannot remain. Only clarity, healing, and divine alignment can follow. That is the sacred truth. When the Spirit stirs someone's heart, it is never random. It is a signal from heaven that destiny is moving, alignment is forming, and God's perfect timing is drawing two souls closer to understanding His purpose. The silence was never rejection. It was preparation. What looked like abandonment was actually divine strategy. In moments when you felt forgotten, when their absence cut deeper than words, heaven was not punishing you. Heaven was protecting purpose. Silence has a way of revealing what words could never teach. It strips away illusions, quiets the noise of attachment, and exposes what is real within you. When God pulls someone away, He is not ending something, He is beginning transformation. The stillness that follows is not emptiness, it is space for growth. So many cry out in confusion, asking why the communication stopped, why the connection faded, why the person they prayed for disappeared without explanation. But if you listen with your spirit instead of your wounds, you will hear what the silence was saying. It was saying, wait, I'm working. God cannot elevate you in an environment that no longer supports your becoming. Sometimes He has to separate you from who you were before you can meet who you are meant to be. The silence was your cocoon. It looked like loss, but it was transformation in disguise. During that quiet period, you weren't just alone, you were being refined. Everything that was dependent on approval had to die. Every ounce of need that made you chase what was not ready had to be stripped away. Silence forces you to face yourself. It exposes where your faith truly stands. When no one is calling, when no message comes through, when heaven itself seems mute, that is when you find out whether you trusted God for comfort or control. Many only trust God when they can still see movement. But true faith begins when nothing moves, when you are forced to rest in divine stillness and believe that He is still at work behind the veil. The one who left or the one who grew distant also needed that silence. You were not the only one being taught. God deals with both sides. He works on hearts separately so they can meet again with new understanding. The same silence that healed you also humbled them. The same pause that strengthened your faith also softened their pride. Silence is a sacred tool of heaven. It equalizes souls, teaching patience, perspective, and humility. What was once taken for granted becomes deeply valued when it's gone. And when you finally begin to find peace in the quiet, something miraculous happens. You stop waiting in pain and start resting in purpose. You begin to understand that silence is not the absence of communication, it's a higher form of it. God speaks in silence because that's the only language the soul can fully hear. Words create distraction, but silence creates revelation. It was in that quiet space that you learned what you truly wanted, what you truly believed, and who you truly were without the noise of validation. You see, silence builds spiritual maturity. It teaches you to differentiate between desire and destiny. You may have desired that person, that opportunity, that outcome, but destiny required something deeper. Desire is emotional, but destiny is spiritual. And sometimes the thing you desire is not yet equipped to meet your destiny. That is why God allows separation. He does not deny you what you ask for. He refines you so you can handle what you prayed for when it finally arrives. There are moments when the silence stretches so long that you begin to question if it will ever break. You might even think the promise has expired, but divine timing is not human timing. What feels like delay is often divine protection. Had God given you what you wanted when you wanted it, it could have destroyed you. A person not healed can turn love into chaos. An opportunity not prepared can turn blessing into burden. The silence gave you strength, discipline, and clarity. It gave them conviction and maturity. When the silence finally ends, both of you will be different, stronger, wiser, and aligned with purpose rather than ego. Think about how the earth works. Between seasons, there is always a still period. After harvest, there is winter, quiet, empty, cold. Nothing seems to grow, but deep beneath the soil, the roots are resting, gathering strength for spring. That is what your silent season was. It wasn't lifeless, it was necessary. God was deepening your roots so your next season of fruit would last. The world could not see it, but heaven was cultivating it. You were being prepared to receive, not repeat. In the quiet, you learned that your worth does not depend on being remembered. You learned that absence does not define value. You discovered that the voice you most needed to hear was not theirs, it was God's. And in that sacred silence, you heard truth. You were never abandoned, you were being advanced. The person you once thought you lost may still reappear, but when they do, you won't meet them from a place of desperation. You'll meet them from a place of wholeness. The silence made sure of that. When they come back, and they will if it's divinely purposed, you'll realize the silence did something neither of you could. It created depth. They'll tell you they thought of you more than you knew. They'll say they finally understand what they couldn't before. You listen not with resentment, but with wisdom, because now you see what heaven was doing all along. God was rewriting both of your stories so they could finally align with His plan. The silence wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Sometimes the silence ends not with reconciliation, but with realization. You may never hear back from them, but you will hear back from God. You'll understand why it had to happen the way it did. You'll see that the silence pushed you closer to your purpose, that it refined your discernment, that it birthed your spiritual authority. When you stop fighting the silence, you start flowing with divine timing. And that's when miracles happen. So, when you look back, you'll see that every unanswered message, every delayed reply, every door that seemed to close was not working against you. It was working for you. You were being hidden, molded, and strengthened for something greater. The silence was not your enemy, it was your teacher. It taught you patience when your flesh wanted control. It taught you faith when your mind wanted proof. And it taught you peace when your heart wanted answers. The silence was heaven's way of saying, "Be still and know that I am God." You had to lose their voice to hear His. You had to stop chasing noise to recognize divine order. And once you learned that, you no longer feared silence. You embraced it. Because now you know that when God goes quiet, he's not gone. He's simply preparing something that requires stillness before manifestation. That is the beauty of divine silence. It doesn't end the story, it rewrites it. It refines your soul until you can handle the blessing you once begged for. It softens hearts, heals wounds, and aligns timing. When it's complete, communication will return, not to fill a void, but to fulfill a purpose. And you'll know then that every moment of stillness had meaning. The silence was never rejection. It was God's preparation for divine connection. A sudden reminder is never random. When someone's name rises in your thoughts out of nowhere, when a memory you buried years ago surfaces like a wave, when their voice echoes in your dreams or their energy seems to fill the air around you, it's not coincidence. It's confirmation that the spiritual connection between you and that person is still active. God allows reminders to rise not to disturb your peace, but to reveal that something is moving in the unseen. The physical silence may remain, but in the spirit, communication is alive and active. You may not be speaking with them in the natural world, but your souls are still in conversation, still exchanging energy, still learning what words could never say. When a connection is divine, distance cannot dissolve it. You can move to another city, block their number, convince yourself that you're over it. But if there was spiritual purpose attached, that thread remains. It's invisible but unbreakable. Every so often, the Spirit will tug on it gently, not to trap you in the past, but to awaken something in you now. That sudden reminder isn't always about them coming back. Sometimes it's about what God wants to bring forth through them. The Spirit uses their memory as a mirror to show you how far you've come, how much you've grown, and how healed you truly are. But there are other times when the reminder carries a different weight, a quiet knowing that something is stirring on both ends. You may not see evidence, but your spirit senses it. You can feel it in your chest like a pulse that doesn't belong to you. That's not imagination, that's connection. The spirit that lives within you also dwells within them, and when divine timing begins to align, the energy between you vibrates again. It's heaven's way of saying, something is shifting. Pay attention. But God often prepares you through subtlety. Before the message comes, before the phone rings, before the reunion happens, the Spirit begins with signs, repetitive thoughts, number patterns, dreams, or random triggers that seem too specific to ignore. These are signals from the spiritual realm reminding you that alignment is near. But the reminder doesn't mean you must act. It means you must observe. Don't rush to reach out. Don't fall into the temptation of trying to force timing. Let the sign prepare you, not pressure you. When God brings reminders, he's not just working on reconnection. He's working on readiness. He will test your emotional maturity by allowing the memory to rise. How you respond reveals your spiritual growth. Do you feel desperate or peaceful? Do you react or reflect? Do you chase the feeling or do you surrender it? The purpose of these reminders is not to reopen old wounds, but to show that healing has occurred. When you can think of that person without bitterness, when your heart no longer aches but understands, that is spiritual evolution. The reminder was simply the test to measure it. Sometimes, though, the reminder carries divine urgency. The Spirit may place someone heavy on your heart because they need prayer, not conversation. You feel their energy because they are struggling silently, and your spirit senses their cry. You might not hear their words, but you can feel their need. In that moment, your role is to intercede, not interfere. Send love through prayer, not through panic. You may never know what your prayer prevented, but heaven does. Divine connections are often sustained by unseen prayers more than spoken words. You see, spiritual connection transcends human logic. You cannot explain why you dream of someone after years, why their name appears in random places, or why their energy feels near during certain seasons. But when it's divine, the Spirit uses that bond to teach, heal, and elevate both souls. Sometimes, one person becomes the channel of awakening for the other. They may not even realize it, but their presence in your life, even if brief, triggered growth, faith, and awareness. That's why you still feel them. They were a divine catalyst. And when God stirs the memory again, it doesn't always mean they are returning physically. It could mean that the lesson attached to them is resurfacing for review. Maybe the pattern you once broke is trying to return in a new form, and the Spirit uses their image to warn you. You've seen this before. Or maybe it's to remind you of your progress, to show you that what once broke you no longer holds power. God's reminders are layered with meaning, and discernment reveals which kind it is. If the reminder brings peace, it's divine. If it brings anxiety, it's emotional. The Spirit's reminders always carry calm assurance, never chaos. That's how you distinguish between a spiritual nudge and a mental loop. When it's spiritual, you feel centered, aware, and at rest. You sense that something holy is unfolding. When it's emotional, you feel restless and uncertain. Always check the energy that comes with the reminder. It will tell you its source. There's also another truth. Sometimes the reminder comes just before reconnection. Before God allows someone to re-enter your life, He first prepares your spirit for their presence. That's why the memory arises. It's like spiritual rehearsal. God never surprises a sensitive heart. He prepares it. You may feel their energy, think of them constantly, or sense that something's coming. Then, just when you accepted it as a mystery, they appear. It may be a text, a call, or a chance encounter, but you'll instantly know that the reminder was prophetic. Heaven gave you a glimpse before the manifestation. When this happens, handle it with grace. Don't let nostalgia control your response. Remember, divine connections are not meant to repeat old cycles, but to reveal new understanding. If communication reopens, approach it from wisdom, not emotion. Speak from peace, not pain. The Spirit didn't bring the reminder to drag you backward, but to move you higher toward clarity, forgiveness, or divine purpose. However, if the reminder never leads to physical reconnection, don't mistake that for failure. The spiritual connection may simply exist on a higher plane, fulfilling its role unseen. You don't always need closure from people when God gives it through revelation. The reminder was never about them coming back. It was about your awakening. It was about reminding you that love never truly dies, it transforms. It was about showing you that every soul that touches yours leaves an imprint that eternity remembers. The greatest wisdom you can gain from these reminders is learning to feel without clinging, to remember without reattaching, to recognize without reaching. That's the mark of spiritual mastery. You've learned that energy doesn't lie, but it also doesn't demand control. When reminders arise, you honor them, bless them, and release them. You thank God for the experience and trust that if reconnection is meant to occur, the Spirit will orchestrate it perfectly. A sudden reminder then is a sacred signpost. It's God saying, I'm still working in unseen ways. It's the universe echoing divine timing. It's your higher self aligning with destiny's rhythm. And when you learn to listen without fear, you discover that nothing is ever random, not the timing, not the thought, not the name that won't leave your spirit. Every reminder is a message from eternity, whispering that energy never dies, it only transforms, and when the time is right, what is meant for you will always find its way back to your soul. When communication returns, it's never without divine intention. God does not reopen old doors for curiosity. He reopens them for closure, completion, or continuation of purpose. The message that arrives after a long silence is not just words, it's an instrument of heaven. When someone reaches out again, when their name appears in your inbox or your phone lights up with their number, it is not by accident. It is divine timing coming full circle. And whether the outcome is reconciliation or release, it will serve the higher purpose of your destiny. When God allows communication to reappear, it's because something has matured, either in you, in them, or in the both of you. The same conversation that once caused pain can now bring peace. The same words that once created confusion can now create clarity. Heaven doesn't waste moments of connection. Every message carries meaning, every exchange carries weight. You must approach it with spiritual awareness, not emotional impulse. Because what's happening in that moment isn't ordinary conversation. It's divine dialogue wrapped in human form. Before the communication arrives, you may sense it. The Spirit often gives advance notice, a stirring, a dream, a feeling of anticipation. It's God's way of preparing your heart so that when it happens, you don't react from surprise, but respond from wisdom. The divine always prepares the vessel before the message arrives. That's why discernment is vital. Not every message deserves a reply, and not every reconnection deserves continuation. Some are sent to complete a chapter, to seal what was unfinished, to bring peace where misunderstanding once lived. When communication finally comes, pause before you answer. Silence and discern. Ask, what is the purpose of this moment? Lord, because divine communication always comes with purpose. It may not be about romance, friendship, or familiarity. It may be about forgiveness. God may be using this moment to free both hearts from the weight of unspoken words. The conversation may not end the way you once dreamed, but it will end the way heaven designed, with clarity, peace, and closure. Sometimes hearing from them again isn't about restoring what was lost. It's about recognizing how much you've grown. When you hear their voice or read their message, you'll notice how different you feel. You'll no longer react with pain, but with calm. You'll no longer speak from longing, but from strength. That's how you know the silence worked. The communication becomes a mirror, showing you your transformation. God uses that moment to confirm that healing is complete. Other times, the conversation becomes a bridge. You realize that while both of you were apart, God was working on both sides. Pride was broken, understanding was born, and perspective was gained. The Spirit, who once separated you, now brings you together again, not as the same people, but as renewed souls. And in that sacred exchange, something divine happens. Words that once wounded begin to heal, apologies flow effortlessly, forgiveness becomes easy. You recognize that the connection was never about possession, it was about purpose. You were meant to meet, to separate, and to meet again, refined by the process. But you must be cautious, for not all reopened doors are meant to stay open. Some are meant only for you to walk through once more and then close gently behind you. When God allows communication, sometimes He's not restoring the connection, He's restoring your peace. The conversation may come so you can finally say what was never said, express what was held back, or simply release the energy that lingered between you. After that, you'll feel a deep calm. Not because they stayed, but because you finally let go with understanding instead of anger. That is divine completion. There is also power in listening more than speaking when this moment arrives. When someone reaches out after a long season, listen to what they don't say as much as what they do. Discern their spirit. Do they speak from healing or from fear, from love or from guilt? God gives you spiritual ears for a reason, so you can hear beyond the surface. Sometimes the person is not returning to resume the relationship, but to find their own redemption. God may be using you as a vessel of grace in their story, just as they were once a vessel in yours. The most profound thing about divine communication is that it always shifts something internally, even if nothing changes externally. You may not get the outcome your emotions hoped for, but you will always receive the outcome your spirit needed. Maybe it brings closure. Maybe it reopens a bond. Maybe it simply reminds you that love, in its purest form, never fails. It only evolves. Whatever it brings, it will carry the unmistakable fingerprint of divine timing. Do not fear what you'll say or how you'll respond. The Spirit that orchestrated this moment will give you the words. You'll know exactly what to speak, and more importantly, what not to. Sometimes silence within the conversation says more than speech. God may ask you to listen to extend grace or to simply observe the completion unfold. You don't need to force understanding. The Spirit will translate what hearts cannot express. Be aware that communication after divine silence can feel emotional. Memories may resurface, old feelings may stir. But this time, you stand on higher ground. You're not reacting from need, but responding from knowing. What once hurt you has now taught you. What once confused you has now matured you. You'll feel gratitude for what once broke you, because now you can see the purpose behind the pain. That's the beauty of divine communication. It doesn't just reconnect you to another soul, it reconnects you to your healed self. And sometimes the most sacred closure is the one that happens without words at all. You may never hear an apology, but the Spirit will whisper peace into your heart. You may never get the answers you wanted, but you'll receive the understanding you needed. When that happens, thank God and move forward. Because divine communication isn't about feeding the past. It's about freeing the present. Remember, God uses people as messengers, not masters. When someone returns, they come bearing a message, not a mission. Your job is to receive the message and discern its purpose. It might say, you're free now. It might say, you're ready for what's next. It might even say, this chapter has served its purpose. Whatever it says, honor it. Don't cling, don't resist. Receive and release. When communication arrives by divine order, it is never meant to create confusion, only completion. Whether it leads to reconnection or final release, it will always serve your spiritual evolution. God does not bring words back into your life to reopen wounds, but to rewrite endings with grace. When you trust that, you'll stop fearing who reaches out and start understanding why they do. Because every message, every call, every conversation that comes in divine timing carries the same eternal purpose, to fulfill what heaven began. When someone reaches out after a long silence, it can feel like the past knocking on the door of your present. Your heart skips a beat, your mind races, and for a moment you wonder what it means. Is it a sign? Is it closure? Is it a new beginning? But before you reply or assume what it's about, you must understand something vital. This moment is not just about them, it's about you. It's about your growth, your awareness, your spiritual maturity. The way you respond determines whether you repeat old patterns or step into a new level of divine wisdom. This isn't just communication. It's divine testing, alignment, and revelation. You see, when God allows someone to reappear in your life, He is not testing your emotions. He's testing your discernment. He's asking, will you respond from the same place of pain or from a place of peace? Because sometimes hearing back from someone isn't about rekindling a relationship. It's about realizing how far you've come. The old version of you might have begged, explained, or chased, but the healed version of you listens differently. You're not desperate for closure anymore. You're anchored in understanding. You don't need validation. You've found your worth in God. That's growth. That's what divine reconnection reveals, not just who they are now, but who you've become. Before you respond, pause and pray. Let your spirit speak before your emotions react. If God has truly orchestrated this moment, he will give you peace about what to say and when to say it. Don't rush to fill the silence with words. Sometimes silence itself speaks volumes. You may feel compelled to reply instantly, but timing is everything in divine communication. Wait for that inner confirmation, that still, gentle voice that says no. Because divine timing doesn't just align events, it aligns hearts. And if this communication is part of a higher plan, it will flow naturally, no forcing, no confusion, no manipulation. However, you must also recognize that not every message is meant to be answered. Some people reach out not because they've changed, but because they feel the absence of your energy. They sense that you've elevated spiritually, and something in them misses that light. But that doesn't mean you need to reopen a chapter that God already closed. Sometimes the divine purpose of hearing back from someone is to confirm that you've outgrown what once bound you. It's a moment of spiritual reflection, to observe without attachment, to bless without returning, to love without losing yourself again. Discernment is your greatest gift in this season. Don't let curiosity drive your response. Let clarity guide it. Ask yourself, does this message bring peace or disturbance? Does it feel like healing or like reopening a wound? Because God never sends confusion. If their words create anxiety, if their energy feels heavy, that's not divine alignment, that's emotional temptation. Remember, the enemy can also use familiar faces to distract you from your purpose. Not every reconnection is restoration. Some are spiritual tests disguised as opportunity. But when it truly is from God, you will know it by the fruit it bears. The conversation won't feel like manipulation. It will feel like peace. There will be honesty, humility, and mutual respect. It will not demand your energy. It will honor your growth. It will not pull you backward. It will move both of you forward in understanding. Divine reconnection carries grace. You can feel it. It's calm, centered, and clear. You won't have to overthink it because it will simply feel right. When you finally choose how to respond, let it come from truth, not emotion. Be honest but gentle, firm but loving. You owe no one a version of yourself that no longer exists. Speak from your healed identity, not your wounded one. If you choose to forgive, do it fully. But don't confuse forgiveness with access. You can bless someone from a distance. You can send love without reopening a door. And if you sense that your role is simply to listen, then listen without attachment. Sometimes the healing happens in that one exchange, and then the season closes peacefully. This is what divine communication is really about: reflection, revelation, and release. Reflection on who you were, revelation of who you are, release of what no longer aligns. Every word spoken, every emotion stirred, every memory revisited, it's all part of a higher orchestration to cleanse your energy, purify your intentions, and align you with God's plan. It's never just about the person. It's about your preparation for what's coming next. Because once you pass this emotional test, you create room for divine connections that truly match your spiritual vibration. You may not realize it now, but how you handle this moment determines the energy you carry into your next chapter. If you respond with fear, you remain bound. If you respond with faith, you rise higher. And if you respond with love, not attachment, but pure love, you unlock divine favor. Because when you choose peace over reaction, heaven takes notice. You've proven that your heart has matured beyond human impulses. You've proven that you are no longer led by wounds, but by wisdom. And that is what God wants to see. Not just that you can receive messages, but that you can handle them with grace. Because the same energy you use to respond here will echo in every future connection. If you can handle a difficult conversation with peace, you can handle destiny with power. If you can respond with wisdom, you can lead with purpose. That's why this moment matters. It's not random communication, it's divine calibration. So, when that message appears on your phone, when that name flashes across your screen, when that person suddenly resurfaces after months or years, don't panic and don't rush. Instead, take a breath, lift your spirit, and remember you are not who you used to be. You don't owe anyone an emotional reaction, only a spiritual response. Let peace be your filter. Let wisdom be your reply. Let love, not attachment, be your posture. Whether you choose to respond or not, the key is to act from divine awareness. Because sometimes the real victory isn't in what you say, it's in what you've already learned. You no longer need closure because you've already closed the chapter in your heart. You no longer need validation because you've already found your worth in God's timing. And when you can stand in that awareness, calm and centered, you've already passed the test. Hearing back from someone is not always the sign to reconnect. Sometimes it's the sign that you are now free. Free from the old story, free from waiting, free from confusion. Free to move forward with grace. And that's the moment heaven smiles, because you've proven that you can recognize divine timing not as a call to react, but as an invitation to rise.